Spider-Man, looks like you have some explaining to do.
Peter Parker picked a peck of pin particles.
I'm sorry, Dr. Hank. Can you ever forgive me? It's okay, Peter. I guess I'll just have to be the bigger man. Welcome to 5 Points of Articulation. In this corner, the mutant hunting Sentinel. In this corner, Galactus, the devourer of worlds. And in this corner, the all-new Giant Man. To celebrate the channel hitting 30,000 subs, I'm pitting these heavy hitters against each other to help you figure out which HasLab is best. Starting off with the packaging, and all three boxes are pretty similar in style. The Sentinel has that House of X style branding, you know, the one where everything's written in Krakoan. Galactus and Giant Man are styled more after comic book covers. In Giant Man's case, it's giant-sized. Beautiful artwork, with the rest of the team down here. One thing Hasbro did was have customers vote on the box art, so naturally it all looks really good. Turning them around, and all three spines have been approached differently, with X-Men being more of the battle, Galactus being Kirby-style paneling, and Giant Man comprised of headshots of Earth's mightiest heroes, the Avengers. Flipping around back, the Sentinel concludes the battle. We actually looked at this in my review of Bastion. Galactus opted for a more practical route by providing a backdrop, and if you've seen enough of my videos, you might recognize that I use this backdrop pretty often. Giant Man does something similar, which is pretty cool, but given how much smaller this box is, I don't know if I'm going to be able to use it for any dioramas. Yeah, I think there's potential. An extra large review like this requires an extra large review space. That brings us to FlexiSpot. FlexiSpot provided this incredible adjustable desk for my new review station. As a content creator, I spend most of my time at desks, so having an adjustable one that lets me stand or sit is going to be a game changer. This one is 4 feet by 30 inches, which is going to give me lots of room to do really fun things. In addition to extra large figures like this, I'll also have more room to review vehicles, even playsets. It's also easily programmable with your height preferences, and just look at how high it can go. With a maximum height of 50 inches, it's great for keeping things out of reach of kids and pets. Just a heads up, it actually arrives in 2 separate boxes, so if the whole thing doesn't come on the same day, there's no need to freak out on the delivery guy. Like I did. If all that wasn't enough, the FlexiSpot desk can even support a maximum weight of 350 pounds. Granted, I'm a little bit less than that. Now, I'm gonna level with you. I was a little bit intimidated by the assembly. Fortunately, the manual is easy to understand, and the steps are very easy to follow. To get your own FlexiSpot desk, use my link in the description below. The best part is that for Black Friday, you can save up to 70%. Not only that, but the first 30 FlexiSpot standing desk orders will get a free keyboard tray. Just a heads up though, this offer is only valid on November 21st, November 28th, and December 2nd. I'm not gonna lie, this is really fun. Huge thanks to FlexiSpot for making this video possible. Seriously, you've got to try this. Again, links in the description below. With the designs of all 3 boxes being voted on by fans, it's kind of hard to choose, but the added versatility gives Galactus and Giant Man an edge. For packaging, this round is a draw between Giant Man and Galactus. Moving on to presentation, and Giant Man is the shortest, standing at just under 24 inches, with the Sentinel coming in second at 26 inches, and Galactus towering over all of them at 29 inches to the top of his helmet and 31 inches to the tips of his tuning forks. From the top, and it's interesting to see the different engineering advancements from year to year. Nice traditional sculpting and painting for the Sentinel. Galactus's head is mostly straightforward, but with a lot of extra painted detail in the mouthpiece. And then you have Giant Man, who not only has advanced painting for the face, but just look at the eyes. They're actually layered with clear plastic over them to look extra realistic. I've got to admit, it's really impressive. Being a robot, the Sentinel is naturally blocky and chunky. There are all sorts of panels and lines, and sundry tubes and hoses to help hide the articulation. And as we'll talk about in the next category, in some ways that's actually going to work to its advantage. For example, using techie details to hide the rivets. One thing that's cool are all the little color pops of the wires. It helps to break things up and make it feel more real. Flipping them around, you can see more of that on the back. One extra detail I like are these extra thrusters sticking out of the shoulders. The Hasbro team really put a lot of thought into this. In the case of the Sentinel, I think my favorite favorite part of the big clunky 90s style boots. No peg holes on the bottom, of course, but he does have these nicely painted thrusters. Galactus is a more straightforward adaptation. All the major broad strokes of his design are there, things like his harness, his skirt, the general shape of his boots, and of course his unmistakable helmet. All Hasbro really did was go in to add some detail to break up the design. Things like extra kibble on the armor or texture to the bodysuit. With Giant Man, Hasbro had to get pretty creative because he's almost nothing but a bodysuit. Like most superhero movies, Hasbro's solution was texture. Not only does the suit have that knitted basketball feel, they really went to town on the leather straps. That's what she said. They also gave the gloves that leather look, but also went in to add piping and stitches. We see more of that with the boot tops. Another thing that helps is the shading. The shadows really help to add depth, but in general just help to break up the monotony of the sculpt. I have heard that a lot of people's Giant Mans don't have the eyes quite right, and to be honest, none of the eyes that came with mine are looking straight. Even so, this Giant Man does look pretty good. Like I said, I particularly love the chunkiness and all the techie details of the Sentinel. That said, Giant Man would probably be my least favorite. Don't get me wrong, I love the engineering and the painted detail, but I do feel like Hasbro kind of overdid it with the textures, and when you step back, he just seems kind of gangly with really big hands. To my eye, Galactus is the best of the bunch, balancing comics accuracy, creative flourishes, and perfect proportions. For presentation, this round goes to Galactus. Moving on to Poseability, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little bit intimidated trying to film this. Out of all of them, Hank is the only one that can look up. Conversely, he also has the best down, though Galactus does get a little bit. He also gets tilt, plus you can technically swivel the antennae, but everyone gets side to side. Moving on down, and the Sentinel shoulder armor is nice and flexible. Galactus's, however, is not. In fact, Galen here has the worst arm raise, with the Sentinel coming in second, with Giant Man being able to raise his arms 90 degrees. He's also the only one of the three that has forward and back with a butterfly joint. All three have bicep swivel, double jointed elbow, with Giant Man having the deepest bend, and swivel hinge wrists. As for the hand itself, each individual joint of each finger is articulated, including a swivel for the palm. Since it's a robot, the detents on the Sentinel fingers really work to its advantage. In the case of Giant Man, I will say the joints are kind of sticky, and it looks kind of segmented. I'm also already seeing stress on the plastic from where I'm trying to flex it, which is honestly making me a little nervous long term. Not gonna lie, I'm kind of wishing they would have just given Hank alternate hands instead. That said, I'm happy to report I'm not having any trouble with the other ones. Galactus and the Sentinel can make all sorts of gestures. Maybe even lewd gestures.
Jace?
Oh, hey, Dad.
Are you filming in my guest room?
Yep.
Why?
I didn't have room at my house.
You're not making any untoward jokes, are you?
What? No! But hey, I got 30,000 subs.
Are one of them going to give me a grandchild?
I mean, probably not.
Well, at least you've got sponsors. Oh, and clean your room.
This isn't even my room. Moving on. Moving to the middle of both the figures and this video, and each of the trio has a diaphragm joint and a reverse ab crunch. Galactus and Giant Man, however, do have harnesses. They can arch back this far, which is fairly equivalent, though I do think the Sentinel has an edge. Here they are, standing straight, and here they are hunching forward, with Giant Man, I think, having the best bend. I also think Hank might just have the best sideways tilt, though the Sentinel's no slouch. I'm actually pretty pleased with how well this harness moves with the articulation. As for leg articulation, Galactus is hindered by his cosmic kilt. As such, he can only kick this high. Next up is Giant Man, with the Sentinel actually having the highest kick of the three. All three figures have thigh cut. Moving on down, the Sentinel is notorious for its loose knees. Robo actually has a really great video for fixing that back when he was still with the Fwoosh. Otherwise, he gets about a 90-degree bend. Galactus is a bit better than 90, but just look at the bend on Hank. Traveling down the leg, and Galactus is the only one with boot cut, but while all three have ankles that can hinge and pivot, only Giant Man has toe articulation. In fact, it's those toes as well as the butterfly joints that help Giant Man stand apart from the competition. Additionally, because his costume is the least encumbered, he has the best range of the trio. A word of the wise though, heat those hands up before flexing the fingers. For Poseability, this round goes to Giant Man. Moving on to Playability, Playability, and this is where things get interesting. In addition to the regular head, the Sentinel comes with a battle-damaged one. I really dig the exposed wires and scuffing, and to be honest, I mainly use it as a diorama piece for figure photography. That in combination with this battle-damaged hand. He's also got this Tri-Sentinel head. Each of the three faces is unique, though I do think this one might be my favorite. For one final head, you can turn this Sentinel into Master Mold. That's particularly good for people who have other smaller Sentinels that they can flank this guy with. The Sentinel also boasts not one, but two bendable tentacles for mutant capturing. He also really lights up a room. The cool thing is if you keep pushing the button, it changes to different colors, and the light source is actually underneath the head, so whatever head you put on there will work. Come to think of it, this is pretty creepy on its own. Of course, when you're a larger-than-life figure like the Sentinel, it only stands to reason you'd have smaller figures as your accessories. In this case, Bastion and Sentinel Prime. That said, I've dedicated an entire video to these two already, which I'll just go ahead and link to the end of this one. Similarly, Galactus comes with 3 of his heralds. That includes the Silver Surfer, Frankie Ray Nova, and Morg. I broke these guys and their accessories down pretty thoroughly in my full Galactus video, so instead of repeating myself, I'm just going to link to that video at the end of this one. Suffice it to say, the cool part is that Galactus can hold them in the palms of his hands. Admittedly, it's a bit of a precarious balancing act, but once you get it, it does look really cool. Instead of alternate heads, Galactus has alternate faceplates. Those include this angry, sneering one, as well as this skeletal, dead one, but the scariest is no faceplate at all. Also, just like the Sentinel, Galactus lights up. I don't know if they had to add all of that, but it does make for a pretty cool effect. That said, Galactus does have one alternate head, turning him into Dr. Doom. Like I said, Giant Man doesn't have any electronic components. He also doesn't come with any figures. Again, though, there is this 2-pack you could buy to augment the set. The funny thing is that when my dad saw the Giant Man, he automatically assumed that this smaller one would have come with him. The fact that that was such a natural assumption to someone like my dad, who's not even that big of a collector, is pretty telling. He does, however, have alternate white antennae. Those more closely match the box art. That said, there's some very fascinating engineering here. Similar to Galactus, instead of having alternate heads, he has alternate faces and alternate eyes. To change those out, you have to undo these pins, and the whole head pops out of the mask like so. To be honest, even that's pretty cool. Either way, that leaves you with this, which can be popped off. So then, in addition to these eyes, there are these proper sideways ones, as well as a pair of looking down ones, which are frankly terrifying. Speaking of looking scary, Hank also has this angry face, though for me, the smiling face might just be the scariest. And that's including the zombie face, which is intentionally trying to be scary. Alternate rotting antennae for that guy, by the way. As a horror lover, I absolutely adore all of these little details. Nice big chunk of his nose missing. Of course, these days we have penicillin to keep that from happening. But one thing I'm a little bit confused by is why they made the glazed over corpse eye swappable. I'm pretty sure none of us were out here hoping to give Giant Man glaucoma. Still, like I always say, options are good. But playability is more than light, swappable heads and smaller figures. It's also about how well your figures play with others. Starting with the Sentinel and keeping things simple, here he is with the Bastion and Sentinel Prime he came back with, and just that core 90s animated series team. And then here we have Galactus and his heralds. This includes the 3 he came with, along with Firelord, Terrax, and Thor. Additionally, and here he is with the Walgreens exclusive wave of the Fantastic Four and the Super Skrull wave version of Dr. Doom. As for Giant Man, he didn't come with any figures, but here we have him with the Giant Man and Wasp 2-pack. Otherwise, and here's Hank surrounded by some of his fellow Avengers, as well as Ultron, his sinister creation. For a relative scale comparison, here are all 3 figures with Pizza Spidey and the Spectacular Spider-Man, and as always, here they are with Stealth Iron Man.
Hey, William Wallace, do me a favor and don't forget I'm downwind, huh?
Of course, if you want to make Galactus appear even larger, you could use a 3 3/4 inch figure like from the Marvel Legends Retro line or Marvel Universe. It's also a great strategy if you want to use this Sentinel as Master Mold. With an extra head, multiple faces, and 3 heralds, it seems like Galactus is the clear winner. As innovative as his engineering is, I don't think anyone would expect Giant Man to take this round. For me, it all comes back to the Sentinel. True, it only only has 2 pack-in figures as opposed to Galactus's 3, but thanks to this alternate head that came with Bastion, you do technically get 3 characters. On that note, in between the Master Mold and Tri-Sentinel heads, you can turn this character into 3. Thanks to the tentacles, he actually has a character-specific weapon, which none of the other HasLabs have, and factoring in troop building potential, for playability, this round goes to Sentinel. This leaves us with nothing left to discuss but the price. The Sentinel was originally $350, Galactus was $400, and Giant Man was $200. There's just one snag. With HasLabs being made to order, none of these figures will ever be available for retail again. At $400 on the aftermarket, Giant Man is technically the cheapest, but that doesn't mean he's the best value. He comes with so little that when his full specs were revealed, a lot of collectors wondered why he was even a HasLab at all. Had he been announced this year, I feel like he would have been one of those open pre-orders like Dragon Man and the 97 Sentinel. That brings us to this Sentinel, which on the aftermarket is currently going for between $600 to $650 on average. Don't get me wrong, this thing is spectacular, but there are now more affordable Sentinel options. Additionally, with X-Men 97 being such a huge hit, I think it's a foregone conclusion we'll be getting a single carded Bastion anytime now. Galactus, by contrast, is averaging for $500, making him the best value of the bunch, the only way to get characters like Nova and Morg, and is the best ratio of retail versus aftermarket. For price, this round goes to Galactus, who wins the battle 3 to 2 to 1. Agree? Disagree? Sound off in the comments. And once again, huge thanks to FlexiSpot for making this video possible, and to my dad for letting me take over his guest room. To see my full Galactus and Bastion videos, check out one of these, and until next time, play nice and have fun.